Pontiac Fiero. You got it, Pontiac.
Hi, thanks for checking out this Fiero fixing video. This video is focused on speaker replacement. If your Fiero speakers aren't working, sound buzzy with bass, or really just distorted, they're either 30-year-old original speakers that have seen their last days or are blown out. I'll show you the steps to remove and replace both front and rear speakers. When choosing a set of speakers, I suggest looking for a quality two-way speaker as opposed to these three-way speakers out there. Three-way speakers tend to cover more of the woofer, which mutes the bass. Plus, more speakers don't always mean better sound. My opinion is to stick with a good quality two-way speaker setup, but as with most things, it's up to you on what you prefer. I hope you find this video useful, and let me know in the comments below what other Fiero videos you'd like to see. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Oh, hey. Thanks for checking out this video on replacing the speakers in your Fiero. By watching this video, I'm assuming you probably want to upgrade your speakers, or your speakers need to be upgraded. You might have some questions on how to do that. I've done a few, so I'll kind of go over a little bit of the basics so you don't make mistakes such as previous owner of this car here decided to try and pry off the cover. Not a good idea. They broke it. I'm going to go ahead and install new speakers there and probably glue this back on, make it look back to factory. But if your speakers sound terrible or are popping or just don't have the sound that you want, we'll go ahead and change those out for you. Alright, so I'm going to start on the passenger side. I'm going to do everything on the passenger side, and then you just take that and do the driver's side the same way. The front passenger and driver's side speakers are 4x10 speakers. There's kits out there if you wanted to change them out to 4-inch speaker. You can do that. I'm just going to go with the stock 4x10 replacement. I'm going to do a two-way speaker. Tools that you're going to need for this are a flathead screwdriver to help pry open the cover. You're going to need a small screwdriver, and you'll probably even need to go smaller than this for the two screws that are typically closest to the windshield. I struggle with this one, so I actually will use a 1/4-inch wrench with a 1/4-inch socket with a Phillips head screwdriver on it. So that actually, you can see, gives you even better clearance. And the side closest to the corner on the A-pillar, I may even go with just the Phillips head bit and a 1/4-inch wrench and just wrench that. If you have any other suggestions on how you've taken these speakers out that might work, leave a comment below and share your ideas. But this is what I use, just tools you can find around your garage. So let's go ahead and start pulling this speaker out. I'm going to use the flathead screwdriver. We're going to carefully pry up on the corners, not putting too much pressure on because we don't want to crack our dash and we don't want to break or rip our speaker cover. So let's go ahead and start that. And I'm putting a little bit of pressure on and just constantly moving it around so that I'm not focusing too much pressure all in one spot for too long to possibly crack the dash. Have it. Alright, looks like this speaker is being held on with 7mm bolts. I've seen Fieros that have 7mm and some that have had Phillips head screws in them, so I'm not sure which one's stock. But this looks like a stock speaker, so it actually may be a 7mm, but if it is, then that makes life a little bit easier. So we're going to go ahead and take these out with a 7mm. All right, so we got it off. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this clip off because I don't intend on reusing it. And unless you really want to keep your Fiero 100% stock and ordering AC Delco replacements, I really don't see a need in keeping it. But if you want to keep it, you can. I'm going to save the couple bucks for buying a harness adapter because I don't ever plan on using Delco speakers again. Even new, I don't think that the quality is going to be up to par with some of these aftermarket speakers. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this and we'll start modifying it for a new one. There we go. All right, for determining your positive and negative, I've kind of looked into it a little bit and I'm not 100% sure which one is positive, which one is negative. I've even checked the service manual, and even in the wiring schematics it doesn't indicate what is a positive and what is a negative for your push-pull. So what I've been going off of is just assuming that A is positive, B is negative. So on the front passenger side speaker, you've got dark green and light green. I've been using dark green as positive and light green as negative. On the driver's side, I believe it's gray and tan. I've been using the gray as the positive and the tan as the negative. If you have any indication on what may be positive and negative for the push and pull, let me know below. If not, I believe that's the way to go. And getting it backwards won't affect anything other than with your push and pull for your bass, you actually might sound a little more flat. You won't have as much bass if you get it backwards. But in my case, doing it this way, I've been pretty happy with the bass, so I'm assuming that it's right. So we'll go ahead and move on. All right, now we're going to strip out some wire. And with my kit, I got some Pioneer speakers, two-way. Came with a little bit of an extension, so I'm going to go ahead and actually use that. I'm going to connect these and then we'll get back at it. All right, we've got our wires connected, ready to go. Now, as an option, I would suggest maybe going for a 4x10 styrofoam baffle. So there's an XTC. Here's a part number in case you want to look at it. You can get it at Parts Express. I think Parts Express also sells them on Amazon. Just look for a 4x10 baffle. What the baffle does is helps give you more bass at higher volume with less distortion by giving you some back pressure on the speaker. The speaker's sitting in here, it has nothing to give any kind of back pressure, so at louder volumes and bass you get more distortion. So what this does is gives it a little bit of back pressure. It kind of gives the bass a little bit more punch and clarity at higher volumes. So if you like your music loud, you like bass, you want to get the most out of your 4x10 speakers, I'd suggest trying to go for a 4x10 baffle. I use them and I think it really helps enhance the bass to its optimal potential. And they're styrofoam, so they're very flexible. They can mold to the inside however they need to. You only need to trim up the edges a little bit to fit your spot. So this is going to need to be cut a little bit with some scissors or a straight blade. So we're going to go ahead and cut this up. You can use your speaker and kind of make it as a template, whichever way you want to do it. So let's go ahead and do that and get this fitted. Alright, I've got my baffle trimmed up here to fit, so we're going to go ahead and fit this in, then we'll get our speaker in. Alright, now you can see how it fits, and go ahead and start getting our speaker in and get this together. Alright, here's the speaker I'm going to use for this car. This is a two-way Pioneer speaker. I'd suggest going with the two-way speaker as opposed to some of these three-way speakers, because these three-way speakers have bigger components that kind of take up more of the space in the woofer, which actually inhibits the woofer to produce an accurate sound. So you're actually getting less bass because you have more of an obstruction in front of the woofer. So my suggestion is to get a really good two-way speaker as opposed to some of these three-way speakers, because the three-way speakers use cheaper components to try and make up some of the cost as a good tweeter. Now this is kind of a mediocre speaker. It's decent. I'm not going to go really expensive on this car, but a good two-way speaker is definitely much better performer than some of these three-way speakers. So I'm going to go ahead and install this, and that's just my opinion. Alright, typically when you buy a speaker, they come with their own sets of screws. I would recommend using those screws as opposed to the ones that the stock Fiero came in, mainly because even though these seem easier to get out than having to use a screwdriver, the washers don't typically fit on these, so you're not going to be able to get this in to get a good bite. So unless you use a longer one of these screws, or you modify the frame of your speaker, it's just not worth it. So we're going to go ahead and use these, and then we'll use our modified screwdrivers to get them all in. Alright, I've set all the screws in. They're just in just a tiny bit. For the back screws, I basically just used a Phillips head screw bit, and I just kind of go in and turn them finger tight as much as I can, so that way I know they're set. Then I move to the front because it's easier to see where the front screws need to set as opposed to the back. So I usually start with the back first, then come to the front. Once I get them set, then I'm going to tighten them down somewhat equally in pressure, especially with these foam baffles. It adds a little extra pressure and tension. So if you add too much pressure on one corner, it could cause the plastic tab on the other corner to pop. So you kind of want to get it to go down pretty evenly, so you don't want to over tighten any one side more than the other. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start screwing down the back, and then I'll screw down the front. Of the side that's closest to the windshield, this one's got the most distance, so I can actually use my ratcheting screwdriver here and kind of start getting that work down. Alright, so on this side I'm going to use my Phillips head screwdriver bit and my 1/4 inch wrench. I'm just going to carefully screw it on. It's a bit slow of a process, but it works. Alright, once you get the head of the screw down far enough, you can sometimes hit it with your socket wrench. Just got to get it at an angle. Alright, so now we're going to start bringing the front screws down, and that one we can just use a straight short screwdriver, and that'll go down pretty easy. Alright, once you have the speaker kind of set in there, you can go ahead and hit all 4 screws again and just kind of tighten them down to a good snug fit. You don't want to over tighten them because you don't want the plastic caps to pop, or you don't want to strip them out. So just snug it up so you get a good seal. That's all you need, so you don't get any rattle. Alright, we've got the speaker cinched down. If you notice, there's a little bit of wire coming up and over in here. This is to run the wire inside the baffle. I wanted to run it up and in as opposed to just punching a hole through it, because the foam, when pushed down, will seal around the wire as opposed to sticking a hole in it, and we get that pressure leak. So that's why we did that way. So now we're ready to put our speaker grill back on and move on to the rears. Alright, now we're going to do the rear speakers. That's a little bit easier in my opinion, a little bit more steps because you have trim to remove, but I'd much rather do these than the fronts with having to work the little screwdrivers. So let's go ahead and go over what we need to get those out. We're going to need a flathead screwdriver to pop the clip off. We're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver to take off the screw here. We're going to need a T50 Torx wrench to remove the top seat belt bolt. Then we're going to need a 7mm wrench to remove the speaker. And then of course we're going to need wire cutters and wire strippers to strip the wires so we can reattach new connectors for the speakers. So let's get started. Alright, so now we're going to tackle the rear speakers. First thing we got to do really is to pop off the upper seat belt. There's a cover on here, so we basically just use a flathead screwdriver to pop that off, and then there'll be a Torx bolt holding the seat belt on. Pop that off, screw here, and we just work it off. So let's get started, and we'll use a flathead screwdriver. Alright, on the inside of the panel there's a Phillips head screw, so just got to pull that out. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and lean our seat forward, and we're going to pull this panel out. It is hooked up here, so you have to pull down a little bit and pull out. And then also around the window there's going to be some black tarry goop. Just be mindful of that so you don't get it stuck all over your windshield and trim panels. Alright, now it's coming loose, but we have that black tar I was explaining. So you just kind of have to slowly pull that out. There you can see. And there's 3 7mm bolts to hold in the speaker as well as the bracket that the speaker is mounted to. And we just pull it off. This also has some black goo on it. Alright, here's our factory 4x6 speaker. Still has the connector connected. And as for the diagnosis of this speaker, it looks like it deteriorated right here, just kind of rotted off over the years, and that's why this speaker doesn't work, so definitely due for replacement. So let's go ahead and get this wired up and back in. Alright, I've got my new two-way Pioneer speaker here. This is the bracket for the old speaker. Make sure to make a note of which end is the top, and we'll just go ahead and mount it up. Basically just hooking it in to all the connections, and we just hook up our wires and slide it back in. One quick note though is when you're selecting a speaker for the 4x6s, make sure that you get one that is a shallow mount, because I have picked up 4x6 speakers that are too deep. Most of them seem to be okay, but just be aware that not all 4x6s will fit. Some can get too deep. Alright, so double checking the orientation of your top. I'm just going to set it back in and screw it in. Alright, once you get your speaker mounted, go ahead and pop the trim back on. Kind of pull down as you're popping it over your trim panels. Put your Phillips head screw back in. Alright, now we're going to put our seat belt back up. Alright, speakers are all installed. They sound great, much better than it did before. So I think we're good to go. I'm not going to give you a demo because, you know, one, I don't want YouTube to yell at me for copyrights, and two, it's only going to sound as good as the speakers you're listening to, so just take my word for it. But anyway, that should do it. Leave me some comments, likes, share it, and let me know what other videos you want to see for the Fiero. Thanks for watching.